Good evening. We are thrilled to have Brad Ingrao present to us this evening. Hopefully everybody that is in the room has your Christmas shopping done and your holiday decorations all put up and you're ready to go. I appreciate you spending the time here tonight. I know everybody is very busy at this time of year. Brad is probably a familiar face to many of you. He's written for Hearing Loss Magazine. He's presented at convention. He has presented at our HAT training. So we're thrilled to have him. He is the tech guru in the hearing loss world. And Brad, without further ado, hit it.
Thanks a lot, Nancy, and thanks for everyone showing up here on a Wednesday evening when there's probably good TV on. It's close to a bunch of holiday stuff going on, and we did this a couple of years ago, and I'm glad that HLAA asked me to come back and kind of revisit this idea of what can we do to improve our ability to hear and understand during the holidays. Now, I realize we missed a couple of holidays already. Thanksgiving and Hanukkah have come and gone. But I think we've got Christmas, we've got New Year's. And the tips that we're going to talk about today will also apply to all of your birthdays and anniversaries and so forth. That'll come as we go down the road. So I'm going to try to shoot for about 45 minutes of lecturing and then leave a good chunk of time at the end for questions. If you can hang on to your question until the end, it'll make things a little smoother for us. If you absolutely have to ask a question, please use the raise hand button on your control panel, and either I'll see it or Nancy will see it, and she'll flag me down, and we'll try to address it. But for the most part, let's try to get through the lecture part, and then I'll be happy to do as much question and answer as we have time for. And if we don't have time for your question, feel free to email it in to Nancy and she'll forward it to me, and we'll get it taken care of that way. Okay? So without further ado, here we go. We're going to talk a little bit about we're going to talk a lot about technology, but we're also going to talk a lot about the psychology and emotional impact of the holidays and how hearing loss can really add to that in both positive and negative ways. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the things about the holidays that make hearing particularly difficult, how to improve the situation. I've got a few examples, and then, as I said, we'll take some questions. So holidays are really important for a lot of reasons. Religion aside, although that's an important part of it, holidays give us the opportunity to kind of step back from our regular routine. You know, most of us are 9 to 5, Monday through Friday in some kind of job or school, or if we're retired, we've got lots of regular activities that we do, and those regular activities give us the opportunity to have a nice fulfilling life, but after a while they get routine. So the holidays give us a little break from that. The holidays give us some opportunity to talk to and visit with friends and family that we may or may not see all the time. And it's really important that we have that holiday time, because in addition to that, it really allows us to reinforce some of our traditions and some of our rituals. The personal and family ones, you know, we always go to Grandma's house, which is over the river and through the woods, as the old song goes. Or we always go to certain worship services at certain holidays. There's also cultural things that happen around holidays where maybe we get together and we have a traditional meal from the old country or something like that. So that's really, in general, why holidays are important. And unfortunately, people with hearing loss often get shortchanged in taking advantage of some of these really important holiday features, because they just don't hear as well. So we're going to look at some ways to make that better for you all. Well, before we can talk about why it's better, we have to talk about why it's not so good. And if you've read anything I've written or have been around any of my talks, you know I always talk about signal-to-noise ratio. How loud is the stuff that you want to hear compared to the stuff that you don't want to hear? Now, holiday gatherings are very difficult because we tend to create very poor signal-to-noise ratio environments. We get not 5 or 6 people together, but we cram 25 people into the living room. And everybody's talking, and everybody's enjoying themselves, and everybody's creating an awful lot of noise that is very hard to distinguish that speech within, because the noise that they're creating is speech also. We also create background noise with music. It's very common to go into somebody's home for a holiday open house, for example, and there's a CD player in the background. You know, we just had our Hearing Loss Association of Sarasota annual holiday party, and I was off in the corner playing my saxophone. So it's really important that you recognize that as you go into these situations, you're going to be dealing with poor signal-to-noise ratio. And then you should be starting to think in advance, what am I going to do to improve my ability? The other thing that makes holiday hearing really difficult is the concept of cognitive load. And I wrote about this in the magazine specifically, but basically cognitive load is how much mental energy you need to exert in order to accomplish whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. So what do we do in the holidays? Well, we travel, sometimes hours, sometimes lots and lots of hours. We fly, we drive, we do all kinds of traveling. That wears us out. We have a lot of conversations in a short period of time. That really doesn't give us a lot of time for downtime to kind of rest and recuperate and rebuild some of those cognitive energy resources. It may be that from, you know, breakfast all the way through after dinner, we're just seeing lots and lots of friends and relatives, and we're constantly having conversations. And the more that we do that, the more difficult it is, because as we get more tired, it takes more effort to try to pull that speech information out, and that makes us more tired, which then requires more effort. So it's kind of a downward spiral. We also have the problem of conversations having higher stakes. Sometimes we don't see these people except for Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, or other time, New Year's. So if we're only going to get 2 hours a year to catch up with our grandkids, and it's really hard to hear our grandkids under the best of circumstances, we're going to be more anxious to make sure that we hear and understand everything. And that's going to add some sort of mental fatigue to us as well, because we're really focusing, we really don't want to miss anything, but we're slightly distracted by the fact that we're worried that we're going to miss something. So it really turns into a situation where many, many cards in the deck are stacked against us. And we're really trying to figure out better ways to do this. So let's talk about a couple of other reasons, and then we'll get into some solutions for you. I don't know about most of you, but I like to be in control. I like to know what my schedule is. I like to set my own schedule as much as possible. And certainly when I'm in an environment where I'm at a disadvantage communicatively, I really want to be in control. But what happens in the holidays? Well, we're no longer in control, even if we're setting the table at our own house, because we've got all kinds of new stuff that comes up. We usually do this, this, and this, but all of a sudden there's a special worship service that we have to go to, or there's a holiday pageant at the school that we have to go to. We don't have control over a lot of the settings that we're going to be in. Our neighbor down the street is going to have a little party, and we never really like to go to their house because the ceilings are really high and it's really hard to hear there, but that's where the party is on the block, so we have to go there. We're not able to set up our best listening environment, and so we're kind of at the mercy of other people. And that can affect different people different ways. For people who are kind of control freaks like me, it gets me a little agitated. For people who are just not very assertive, it can cause them to kind of back down and be less assertive. The stigma of hearing loss is also there. You know, it has to be hard, I think, and harder than usual to go into a social situation where nobody really knows you have a hearing loss, and know in the back of your mind that the only way that you're going to survive is if you tell people, I have a hearing loss and here's how I need you to help me hear better. That's very stressful. So for some people, the answer is, okay, I'm going to suck it up. This is the year that I come out to my friends and family as hard of hearing, and I'm going to do it. For other people, they just bluff, and they nod their head, and they kind of sit back and wait for other people to laugh, and then they laugh. And I'm sure that you know lots of people in both of those camps. Other people will take complete control of the conversation and not let anybody else get a word in edgewise, because if I'm talking, I don't have to listen. All of those things tie into this risk of being exposed as having a hearing loss. And the only thing I can say to you as a person without a hearing loss is the best information we have from HLAA and people who have successfully navigated their hearing loss for years is, as difficult as it is to stand up and say, I don't hear well and this is how you can help me hear better. As difficult as that is, the payoff is 100 times greater, and so it really behooves you to just get over it and do it. Get some help, get some support through your local chapter, contact a peer mentor if you have access to one, but really try to get to the point where you feel comfortable enough to get what you need communicatively, even if that means you got to wear that button that says, I'm hard of hearing and I lip read, please face me. Okay? Much easier said than done, but really, really important. Okay, so how do we make it better? Well, we make it better by being honest, by saying to our families, to our friends, to the people that we are going to be in contact with, hey, you know what? I don't hear as well as I used to, or I don't hear well, I never did. And you may have never known that, but it really is difficult for me to hear and understand in the following situations. And then educate your friends and family about that. Be prepared, do some homework, take some control if you can, try to conserve your energy, and then finally give feedback. And we're going to go through each one of these in a little more detail. So being honest. First of all, you have to be honest with yourself. You have to accept your hearing loss. You have to understand that you have it, that as much as you wish you didn't have it, it's there, and you have to learn to become somewhat at peace with it. That's not easy. It's very difficult, in fact, and that's why organizations like HLAA are so important. Get support, get help, get other people to kind of help you see how they did it, and it will get better, okay? Also, get your hearing aids, get cochlear implants, get hearing assistive technology, get the tools that you need so that your hearing loss becomes as small of an issue as possible. It'll never go away, and these technologies won't fix your hearing loss. They will, however, when used properly, make the negative impact of your hearing loss as small as possible. So really get to know what makes you hear better, and also don't bluff. Bluffing doesn't help anybody. You think you hear and before you know it, you're agreeing to be Santa Claus in the next parade and you don't even want to do it, or worse. The other part of being honest is disclosing your hearing loss to other people, right? And this is, again, very, very hard. But these are people who care about you. These are your friends. These are your family. These are your relatives. These are folks who, believe it or not, actually want to have a meaningful conversation with you. If they want to have a meaningful conversation with you, then they absolutely need to know how to do that. And if they don't know that you have a hearing loss, they won't know that standing next to the refrigerator that's running and making noise is a bad thing. They won't know that going outside where it's a little less noisy is a good thing. So you have to help them, but you have to help them by being honest. The other side of disclosing your hearing loss is you may actually encourage somebody who hasn't yet come to terms with their own hearing loss to get help and start on their journey toward better communication. You got to educate yourself. You have to know what you need. And this is going to be a recurring theme. You've got to know what your resources are. You've got to know what your tools are. You have to build a little toolkit and carry it with you. If you're not a member of HLAA yet, join. It's the best investment you can make in your life and in the lives of the people that you care about. Get on the listservs. Ask questions. Find out what other people do. Okay? Listening to one guy talk about ideas is great, but listening to 30 or 40 people who go through the same thing every holiday season is much, much better. Okay? You got to educate the people that you care about. You got to teach them how to speak better, how to communicate with you, right? Hearing Loss Association of America has a great little tip card. That's great. But also get them to join HLAA. Get them to join the listservs. Get them involved in your life. If you had diabetes, you certainly wouldn't hide that from the person cooking Christmas dinner. You would want to share that with them and say, I really want to participate, but I have a few dietary concerns, and I would be willing to bet they would say, sure, let's work around that. That's not a problem. We want you to enjoy dinner. Well, this is the same thing. So get them on board, get them knowledgeable about hearing loss, and again, by doing this, you open the door for somebody who's still in the hearing loss closet to kind of peek out and see that it's not so scary and maybe do something about their own hearing loss. Okay, be prepared. This is really very critical. If you have hearing aids or cochlear implants and they're not in optimal condition, then you're going to have a really difficult time at the holidays because the holidays are the hardest time. So make an appointment about a month before all of this stuff happens and get your hearing retested. Make sure you understand how well you really function in background noise. Ask for a speech and noise test. There's several out there. If you use a cochlear implant, there's a specific speech and noise test that's part of what should be your regular test battery anyway. And if you're a hearing aid user, that or similar tests can be used as well. But you really need to get a good idea how bad it can be before you fall apart. That's the real key. We're trying to figure out what the environment can be like in order for you to successfully navigate it and communicate, and when it will be so bad that you're going to have to remove yourself from the situation or move around or use a different technology. Make sure that your hearing aids or cochlear implant programming is up to date and matches your current hearing testing. Make sure that if you haven't had a map for your cochlear implant in 2 or 3 years, that you get in and get that checked out. It probably won't be drastically different, but there might be minor changes that can help you out. Okay? Make sure that your microphones and your telecoils are working. Make sure that your programs that activate those features are working. Work with your audiologist or hearing instrument specialist to not only listen to them and say, yeah, they sound pretty good, but to actually measure them and verify that they're doing their job. Get a bunch of batteries, keep them with you, try to, and as much as you hate to throw away a possibly quote-unquote good battery, I would recommend before each and every one of these important listening events like the dinner or the church service or the play at the kids' school, just suck it up, pay the extra couple of bucks, and put brand new batteries in your devices. Now, if you're using a cochlear implant and you're using rechargeable batteries, you know, have a freshly charged battery. Even if you know, oh, I've got 3 or 4 hours to go, just use the newly charged battery. If you're using hearing aids or disposable batteries, put new ones in. You're not going to hear tremendously better, but you're going to take away that slight anxiety that you might have a fall off in your power right in the middle of that conversation. Because remember, you're not necessarily going to have your normal 8 or 12-hour listening day. It might go on 14, 16 hours. And the last thing you want to do is be hearing, and then right when you're getting that conversation that person you haven't seen in 20 years, you begin to trail off on your battery, and then you start missing things. So go for the new stuff. Go for the freshly charged batteries. Have a couple extras in your pocket just in case, and make sure that your hearing aids are clean. Don't just do what you normally do. Bring them into your professional and have them really clean, including cochlear implants. Cochlear implant processors have lots of connections where the coil wire attaches to the processor and where it attaches to the coil. Those electrical contacts can get a little bit corroded depending on where you live. Make sure those are clean, your battery contacts, and you should be using this anyway, but if you're not using it beforehand, get a really good dehumidifier. Not just a bucket of rice or a couple of pellets of silica gel, but one of the active heated dehumidifiers that really do a good job of clearing out all the moisture in the hearing aid or cochlear implant every night so that you reduce the buildup of salts and other debris on those connections, which little by little reduces the effectiveness of the device. So you really want to kind of tune that up. You probably wouldn't drive from Florida to Ohio without changing the oil in the car, getting the tires checked and all of that. So don't do that unless you do that with your hearing systems, because they're just as important as the car. All right, the next part of being prepared is kind of knowing what's going on, right? Make an itinerary. Figure out what's happening, how many are going to be at those dinners, right? Where could you sit? What room is it going to be in the house? Don't sit next to the heater that's next to the window or something like that. Find out if it's going to be kids or that one cousin who talks really loud, or by the other side of the coin, that one aunt who speaks very, very softly. Figure that out. The special venues that you may be going to, theaters, worship services, find out if they have a hearing loop. If they don't have a hearing loop, find out what technology they may have that you may need to contact them. Find out if it's working. Make sure that if it's not working, you can bring your own and attach it to the sound system or the person running the worship service or whatever. Okay? Make sure that you've planned for all that. See if you can get a better seat if possible. Again, all of this means that you have to own up to your hearing loss and you have to disclose it to certain people. But ultimately, it will be so much better, because imagine you go to that pageant and your grandchild is singing their little song. They may not have a solo, but they're on stage, they're doing their thing. Wouldn't it be wonderful for you to sit down afterwards and look them in the eye and say that you really actually heard them, and wasn't it wonderful that you, rather than bluffing? The last thing you want to do is bluff a kid, because they'll figure it out. You can't fool a kid. Okay, let's move on to taking control. This is really important. Get there early. When you get to an event, including a dinner or a party or whatever, figure out where you can hear well. Find out if there are places where you hear really poorly and avoid them. Try to move yourself toward the better areas. See if you can find some places in that environment where background noise is really minimal, where reverberation is almost non-existent, and nobody else is around, and sort of identify those as rest stops. So when you get a little overloaded, which you probably will, you can kind of excuse yourself and go to that rest stop and give your ears and your brain a little bit of a rest, okay? You can just kind of sit there. Maybe it's go outside, walk around, whatever it is. The accessibility is really difficult at some situations like dinners. It's not so hard at theaters and houses of worship, okay? Again, going back to be proactive, don't be reactive, be honest. I don't know why it says C, be honest, but I guess I'm trying to be one of the CBs. No, be honest, educate people, make sure, again, that you know what you need and that they know what you need. Because I would really be very surprised if you went to any of the people in your family or friends and said, I need this, this, and this to help me hear better. I'll provide 90% of it. I just need to get there 10 minutes early. Nobody's going to say no. And if they say no, do it anyway. It's your right to get in there, get what you need, but you have to know it, and you got to plan for it. You can't spring this on people. You can't show up at a restaurant and say, everybody over there must shut up. No, you contact the restaurant ahead of time and say, I'm with a group of people, and some of the people are hard of hearing. Is there a quieter section of the restaurant we can sit at? That doesn't necessarily point the finger of outing at yourself, and the reality is you probably do have other people in your party who are hard of hearing, but it gets the restaurant or whoever a little bit of time to think about how they're going to solve that problem, rather than showing up and causing a problem. All right? I'm a big person for avoiding issues by planning ahead. All right, conserving energy. This is a tough one because, again, your schedules are not your own usually. But get a lot of rest before you have to do these listening intensive events. Take a nap, if you have to. Do whatever you have to do. Do some yoga, some Tai Chi, whatever it is that really kind of gets your whole body relaxed and centered and gets your brain ready to do some difficult listening, okay? When you find those rest stops in whatever venue you're in, use them. Go there periodically, like listen for an hour, take 5 minutes rest. Go listen for another hour, go take 5 minutes rest, okay? If you have really important conversations that need to happen, like that relative you never ever see or somebody else that's just you've got to talk to, find those sort of sweet spot areas and just say, and it can be very casual, boy, it's really noisy in here. Would you mind if we go over there? I don't like noise. It's irritating to me. You walk over there to that place where you've already determined I can hear well in. Now, if there's only one spot in the whole house where you can hear well, park yourself there and let them come to you. The reality is they probably will, and it is what it is. If you're at a cocktail party and there's seating for 30 and there's 40 people there, first come, first serve on that settee over in the corner, do it. Grab it and make sure that you bring those conversations into an area where you can function. This is the point where I have to tell one of my Mark Ross stories. And if you've been around HLAA for a while, you know who Mark Ross is. He was the person who wrote the articles prior to me. He's also one of the sort of the champions and heroes of both audiology and the consumer group of people with hearing loss. I met him at an SHHH convention way back when, at an opening reception where everybody was poking microphones in everybody's faces. It was very noisy. There was a couple hundred people around. And I went over to introduce myself, and he just led me out of the room. We closed the door. He listened. He didn't like what he heard. He looked around, and he found a little tiny alcove off in the corner of the atrium where the ceiling was low and there was carpeting on the walls and the floor and halfway up the walls. We went in there, and it was extremely easy to hear. And he said, now we can speak like gentlemen. My name is Mark. Nice to meet you. So that's kind of the idea, is if you can identify and create these places where you know you hear well, where your hearing technology works best, where your assistive technology is effective, don't be shy about putting yourself there. And you can kind of put it on the other person and say, I am so interested in what you have to say. I really don't want to miss any of it. And as with everybody, it's really difficult to understand with all this background noise, so let's go over here. Again, you're not pointing the finger at yourself. You're making a very clear, true statement that even a person with normal hearing will struggle with a lot of background noise. So let's move to an area where we don't have to work so hard. Okay? Finally, you know, sometimes you just have to cut your losses. Sometimes you get lost. Sometimes it's just too much, and you're just going to have to say, it's been so fantastic talking with you. Could you excuse me, please? And you got to go somewhere else, and you have to find a person that you can hear better or whatever. Or you say, I don't really want to monopolize you for the whole evening. I'm sure you've got plenty of people to visit with. It was so nice to see you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again next year. And you take off, you hit your rest stop, you kind of get your energy back, and then you go out and you find another communicative partner who you function with a little bit easier. And I hate to say that, but the reality is sometimes it's just too difficult. And when it's just too difficult, you got to take care of yourself. Okay. Feedback is really important. Not the kind that comes out of your hearing aid, but the kind that will help people not only improve their communication with you in the moment, but also to improve their communication with you in the future and with other people who have hearing loss. So acknowledge the effort that they made. You know, really say after the, you know, I really appreciate that you helped me hear better. I love that story about Uncle Fred, and the fact that you were willing to come over here where I hear better means the world to me, and I really appreciate the effort. If you go to a party or you go to an event and it was okay but not great, you can say, again, you know, I really appreciate all the work you did to help this be hearing friendly. If you're interested, I got a couple of suggestions that might even make it better, not just for me but for everybody. And sort of feel them out, see how receptive they are. And if you see somebody who has a hearing loss, who's really, really struggling, you be that bridge. Help them out. Show them the rest stop. Show them the sweet spot. Show them how they can hear better. Give them the benefit of all the work that you did, and be an ambassador for that person so that next year they're in a position of doing better just like you did, and maybe they can identify another person who needs some help, and you can kind of pay it forward that way. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of examples, and then I will take some questions. So here we have a typical holiday dinner, and I'm going to see if I can get my little drawing pen here. So imagine, if you will, where's my pen? Okay. Imagine, if you will, that as the person with the hearing loss, you're sitting right here. Well, what we know about hearing technology that relies on microphones is that you're going to hear really well right here, here, and maybe here, and here. But the distance beyond that is probably going to be challenging for you. So you can sit there and you can work really hard and try to hear, or maybe you could sit here or here. And by doing that, you kind of put yourself in a better situation. That, of course, assumes that there's not a screaming kid right here. So you're going to have to kind of play around with it and look. If we look at this photo here, this shows another holiday dinner, but we have another big problem here. Obviously, this is a very high ceiling. You can see there's a beam way up here. So the reverberation is probably not great. And then right here, we have a big window. So the last place a person with a hearing loss wants to be is here or here, because all they're going to hear is all this background noise bouncing off this window and coming back. So if you're in this situation and you have a hearing loss, then you probably want to sit here or here and accept the reality that you're probably going to have 2 or 3 conversation partners and not the whole table. There's just simply no way to do the whole table unless everybody has a microphone, everybody agrees to speak one at a time, and you have a sound engineer adjusting the microphones as you go. Technically, it's possible. Practically, it's just not going to happen. So align your expectations with the realities of the situation and just kind of work it out and make it kind of work. If you're going to a restaurant, see if you can get seated early or late when there's not 100 people in the restaurant. Maybe there's only 50. Okay? It's not perfect, but it can be better than just sitting there amid a wash of noise, nodding your head and bluffing and being completely exhausted by the end and not enjoying dinner. Okay. The cocktail party, man, that's a tough one. So here again, we've got a whole bunch of people, and we've got, you know, glass here and all kinds of stuff, but we've got this really cool little spot right here. Look at those two little chairs. Those are very soft, cushy chairs. There's a bunch of, it looks like there's a bunch of clothes or something here hanging up. And that's a material that would be sound absorptive. Now, it's not ideal because it looks like right here we have the bar, but the majority of the people are over here. So if you could say, hey, this here is my rest stop and my best hearing zone, and you can kind of park yourself there, that's a really good way to kind of survive the cocktail party and do better. In that quieter environment, your remote microphones and your hearing assistive technology will be better able to handle things. The last place you want to be is like way over here in the middle of stuff. So it's not ideal, but it can work. Finally, the worship service. You know, ideally, your worship service will have a hearing loop. And then all you need to do is pop on your telecoil and you're good to go. If you don't have a hearing loop, well, then you might want to call ahead and say, you know, I'm really looking forward to the service, but I have a hearing loss, and I use a technology that helps me hear better, and it has a reasonably long range, but not terribly long. I'd like to be able to sit in the first couple of rows and ask the person leading the worship service to wear a little microphone on their lapel. So you can take your Bluetooth remote mic, you can ask the person leading the service to do that, or if they have a sound system, find out if there's a way that you can plug into that. Okay? Don't sit way back here and nod your head and not participate. If worship services are an important part of your holiday traditions, then you need to access them as fully as possible. And the best way to do that, again, is find out what's there in advance, be proactive, and help them help you. And then when it comes to the social time afterwards, treat the social time just like you treated the cocktail party. So find yourself a little nice spot, you know, stay away from probably the cookies and the coffee because that's where everybody's going to be, and create yourself a workable solution where you can hear and you can understand fairly well. Okay? All right. Well, we're going to, now that I've killed Deanna with my running speech very quickly, we're going to take some questions. So in order to do questions, you're just going to use the chat and type in your questions, and I'll try. What I'll do is I'll read the questions out loud, and then I'll answer them. So our first question here is from Charlie. Can you give any examples of Bluetooth remote mics? Sure. There are several out there. Phonak has one. Au.D has one. Starkey and GN Resound have wireless remote mics that are not Bluetooth. They're other wireless. And Clear Sounds has the new Quattro 4, which I think it's finally released, has a removable remote microphone. Tony says, do you know any personal amplifiers that have a very narrow beam so I'd be able to pick up a conversation from across a long table and not hear on the sides? Not the amplifier itself, Tony. That would be the microphone itself. The microphone, you can, in most personal amplifiers, the good ones anyway, will have a removable microphone like the Pocket Talkers and some of the ones by Comfort Audio, where you can remove the standard microphone that comes with it and put in a different microphone. And so there are better quality remote or extension microphones that are highly directional. However, realize that unless you're using a microphone that was designed for movie production that's in the several $1,000 range, you're probably not going to reach across a long table. With any of these directional microphones, you're probably going to be good for, 5, 6, 8 feet at the most. Once you get beyond that, even though the beam is fairly narrow, they're simply not designed to pick up that far away. There are some very specialized shotgun microphones that can do that, but it's really not something that's easily accessible and wouldn't necessarily be compatible with that personal amplifier. They're really much more designed to be plugged into professional soundboards. So the better solution would be for you to sit in the middle and use that directional microphone as best you can. But it's a non-ideal situation, and unfortunately there's not an easy solution short of several microphones at the table that could be controlled by some kind of mixer. Other questions? I can't believe I covered the material that well. Okay. I guess this is a follow-up from Tony. How do you handle that people keep forgetting about your hearing loss? That is a tough one. I think what you do is you try to be patient. You try to remember. But if there are people that are important to you, at some point, I believe you have to employ tough love and say, I really am working very hard to be in a communication relationship with you. And this, I think you could say this to a spouse or a close relative or a close friend. For me to even be in this conversation, I'm putting hearing aids on or a cochlear implant, I'm doing a lot of work, I'm really trying, and all I'm really asking for you to do is to remember that I need you not to talk with your mouth full, and I need you not to stick your hands in front of your mouth. And I've asked you this about 20 times, and I'm really sorry, but if you really can't remember that, then maybe we shouldn't hang out as much. Now, you probably can't say that to your spouse, but if it's a neighbor or a friend or something like that, you might need to cut them off for a little while and say, look, I really value our friendship, and I really value our communication. And if you don't value it enough to just simply remember 1 or 2 ways to help me hear better, then I'm really not feeling very respected in this relationship, and I think we should probably take a little break. That's a tough thing for a lot of people to do, but oftentimes if you change that, if you kind of flip it around on people, they may go, wow, that's really, I never realized it. The other way you can do it is you can say, when you don't remember these little things that I've asked you again and again and again to do to help me hear better so I can be connected to you, it really hurts my feelings. And oftentimes if you say it that way, if you say, look, I really get sad when you forget these things, then it can help people not feel like they're being attacked, and it can help people kind of be better. All right, so Shell says, this isn't a question, but about 4 or 5 years ago, I learned my preparation in going to a banquet type event wasn't just about what I was going to wear anymore. I had to plan ahead and make it easier to hear. The next time I went, I took my FM and heard people better than hearing people. Fantastic. Thank you for that comment, Shell. Absolutely. When I don't go to restaurants a lot. I don't go to bars ever. I don't go to cocktail parties unless I'm playing the sax in the corner, because even though I have normal hearing still, I don't like that noise. It's just very uncomfortable for me. It just puts me on edge. And I have to work really hard to hear, even though I have normal hearing. So I often think, gee, maybe I should just get an FM system and plug it in because I would hear better. And oftentimes, yeah, if you're effectively using hearing assistive technology, you may actually hear better than some of the hearing people. Any other questions or comments? I see we have a couple of superstars from the hat world, and I'm hoping that they might pop in with some additional information if I've missed anything. No? Really? Wow. Okay. Well, I guess if we don't have any other questions, then we might wrap a little early. Again, I encourage you to email. You can, I'll put my email address up on the slide here. I have about 17 email addresses, so that's why you may or may not. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Here we go. So if you have questions that pop up afterwards or you have comments or whatever, go ahead and send me an email. I'll be happy to answer them. What I'll do is I'll copy Nancy Macklin on them so that once we get the transcript and the recording of this posted, there we might be able to add a comment section or something for some of the other questions. But if there are no other questions, then I would say thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you all coming in on a Wednesday evening. Make sure there's not. He's not kidding. Okay. Oh, where do you find the read your lips buttons? Okay. Okay, you guys are already working that out, boy. Vicky says, I think it's important to accept that situations will not be perfect. Absolutely. And you're also very welcome. So yeah, let's kind of wrap up. I'm going to turn it back over to Nancy to do some wrap up. But if, did I display my email on the slides? It's on this last one. It's not on the other slides. I think I just put it on the question slide. If not, you can contact HLAA and they can get you in contact with me. But I'm going to turn it back over to Nancy. Thanks again very much, and you all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much, Brad. That was very informative. I want to remind you all that this will be available for replay later on and it's on our online channel. That is also where you click the Join Webinar button for tonight, and also where you will find a link to a survey. If you might just take a couple of minutes to complete the survey and let me know how you enjoyed tonight's webinar. Brad is always a great presenter, but it's helpful for me to also know how easy it was for you to set up your computer with Java and how easy it is to get in to collaborate. I think the more that we use the webinars or have the webinars, you'll find that it's very easy to get in, and it can do a lot of cool things too. So we look forward to a very full schedule of webinars coming up. In January, the JanSub issue of Hearing Loss Magazine is going to concentrate on employment. We very rarely focus only on one topic, but our new executive director, Anna, is very interested in employment issues for people with hearing loss. And I think everyone is going to really enjoy this issue. It's packed full of really great information, from interviewing all the way through, aging into your hearing loss on the job. Some really great information. I think people that are even retired will still find that it's very interesting and it has good pass-along value as well. So one of our board members, Valerie Stanford Malice, will be presenting on employment and technology for youth in the workplace. And we hope then to also include future webinars from the employer's perspective. We're talking to a couple of large employers and how they deal with accommodating people with hearing loss on the job, despite the fact that a lot of times people do not disclose that they have a disability or have a hearing loss. So some really good webinars coming up we're very excited about. So please spread the word to your chapters and to your friends and family about how important it is to tune into the webinars. We hope to get the replay posted very quickly on this. However, we just got a really great Christmas present yesterday, our holiday present. Our executive director, Anna, disclosed that the national office will close Christmas Eve and not reopen until January 2nd. You can just imagine the hoops and hollers that were going on when everybody heard that news. We were very excited. We've all worked very hard this year, and so we're very excited to spend the rest of the holidays with our families. Again, if anybody doesn't have any questions, I guess we'll sign off. I wish everybody a very happy holidays, happy New Year, and we'll see you. Good evening.